We are delighted to welcome our next speakers, Günther Degitz and Carina Nilles, Managing Director and Director at AlixPartners. Günther brings more than 25 years of professional experience in international investigations involving misconduct, while Carina is a go-to expert for high-profile investigations and compliance issues. AlixPartners helps businesses, regulators and authorities around the world respond efficiently and effectively to compliance challenges when it really matters. Günther and Carina remark that knowing your data is key. What's available and where? What are you allowed to use under which circumstances, and how will you go about analyzing it?
Thank you so much, Tanya, for the kind welcome. And as you can see, I'm both speaking on behalf of myself and in parallel also representing Günther Degitz this afternoon. A very good afternoon wherever you currently are watching this presentation. It's an honor for me to speak to you today. And in fact, I could not have asked for a better introduction to today's topic than the Pandora Papers. The Pandora Papers are yet another outstanding piece of work of the ICIJ, and while the issues that they raise aren't new as such, the scope of the papers emphasizes the vastness of the challenge that we're facing. The Pandora Papers comprise around 3 terabytes of data, and as such they are a prime example showcasing how mastering data analytics is key when conducting efficient and intelligent investigations. And this is what we're going to talk about for the next 30 minutes. Now, you all know these visualizations, the growth of data volumes on a daily basis, on a weekly, or maybe even on an annual basis. And I'm not going to talk to you today about the sheer growth in volume, but in fact, the fragmentation coming along with the data growth. You can see when you look at the chart, it's not so much just the growth in volume, but in fact, a majority of the tools that are available in 2020 and generate lots of relevant input for investigations have as such not yet existed in 2012. Now, for your reference, 1 gigabyte of data contains roughly 15,000 pages of image files, 165,000 pages of Microsoft Excel files, and as such, that's just a representative example of what you can find in one gigabyte. If we take a standard average type of investigation, we say we have 5 custodians over a 10-year time period, we end up with 50 gigabytes of data. That as such is not a challenge anymore these days. However, your data is not going to look as homogeneous as on the chart, but in fact, more like this. So you will have a fragmented landscape of different data sources that you need to group together in order to collect your databases for an investigation. And we all know, based on our very own personal experience from the past 1.5 years roughly, that a lot of the communication that has previously taken place face-to-face has now been replaced by video tools, by chat conferencing tools, and other types of digital communication methods. Each of them creating data, which again needs to be leveraged in investigations. Now, what does that mean in terms of the new way of working on an investigation basis? Well, corporations find themselves in a situation where they need to find the balance between, on the one hand, providing their employees with creative freedom and allowing them to use state-of-the-art technology in their work, and on the other hand, they always need to be able at any time of the process to have an overview of the tools that are being used in the organization and to be able to access, investigate, and in case of regulatory inquiries, also produce relevant data. What further adds on to the challenge is the fact that there is an ever-increasing use of personal devices to access corporate resources. As such, the line between, on the one hand, personal data and on the other hand, professional information is further being blurred, which raises challenges from a data privacy perspective. Now, obviously, that new way of working also has an impact on how investigations are conducted these days. What's important, though, and we can see that on the next slide, here we go, investigation practices, they remain. So the best practices about how you plan your investigation, how you set it out, how you document your results, those don't change. Nevertheless, what does change is the fact that your planning needs to be even much more in depth, and you need to sequence your investigation even better to ensure that even in a remote setting, you have at all times an overview of the investigation process. It also means that you have to master remote data collection and investigation workflows to conduct both data collection and subsequent analysis fully remotely. And while based on our very own experience, these two elements are easily manageable on a remote basis, it's in fact the third element on the very top of the slide that we believe should, whenever be possible, conducted in person. And it's interviews, because interviews, of course, you can do that in a technology-assisted remote manner. However, they really constitute the pinnacle of every investigation, and wherever possible, we recommend that you do those in person. Now, I would suggest, without going further into theory, let's move to some more practice at this point. And I've brought to you a case study that emphasizes what we have done on behalf of a fintech in a fully remote investigation when we were asked to help them identify and analyze potentially critical transactions. So in a fully remote setting, we first sourced data that included structured and unstructured data from the fintech, and we enriched the data with additional external information. We moved on to preparing the data, as in harmonizing it, cleansing it, reshaping it, and eventually storing the data in a scalable database. All of that fully remote. As we moved on to the analytics and review part of the engagement, we bundled transaction information, put them into packages, so to say, and we provided them to reviewers together with a dashboard that contained additional structured information to further raise the quality of the review that was being done. Now, eventually, when we came to a conclusion on our investigation, we packaged up our observations, put them into XML files that we created automatically, and then established a process that would automatically report those observations to the local financial intelligence unit. So as you can see from the chart, throughout the different stages of the process, we applied different types of tools and software. That's, for example, Hive, that's Uzi, that's Python, a variety of different tools. And that's also emphasized on my next slide, which shows that throughout the digital investigation process, we are working with a variety of tools as applicable to the specific investigation. And what I need to say about the tools is that they both contain publicly available off-the-shelf solutions, like, for example, relativity that you can see on top, or it also includes proprietary solutions that we develop at AlixPartners, either as standalone software solutions or to add on to existing solutions like relativity. One such example is Sharp, the single holistic analytics review platform, which we've developed as an add-on to relativity. And as we go further through the presentation, you will see more use cases of the different software shown on this slide. It's, however, not just the software, but actually the underlying tools and the underlying techniques that matter in digital investigations. And one of the key elements as such is computer-assisted review. In a world where we have around 300 billion emails sent daily, and there is an ever-present risk of human error and inconsistency as we go about classifying large volumes of documents, computer-assisted review can help you by automating classification and prioritization of documents. Now, there are different approaches of how this works, but essentially you will have one expert, subject matter expert, in fact, from your team that will go about classifying a sample set of documents, and as such kind of providing input to the machine learning algorithms that will then come up with proposed automated classifications for the rest of the document population. As such, computer-assisted review allows you to review overall fewer documents manually, while at the same time you will be able to discover more relevant document and result with less false positive documents in your review. Now, computer-assisted review is not one size fits all, but in fact, the approach of predictive coding comprises a variety of different elements. And you can see them here in my little predictive coding toolbox that I brought along. And it's different elements that you can mix and match depending on the very specific needs and requirements of your investigation. So for example, we can identify email threads, we can identify email stubs, or we can perform conceptual searches, conceptual clustering, or alternatively or additionally, you can work with bespoke deduplication solutions, or as we're going to see in an example coming up later, you have different tools and techniques to first identify documents in foreign languages and then work with machine translations to integrate those documents in your review. In order to show you what that means on a practical level, I've brought along an example from a recent investigation that we have done. As you can see here, we've been able to derive an automated coding decision for 3.5 million documents on the basis of just reviewing 8,000 documents manually. So that's 0.2% of the population of documents that we had reviewed manually to then come up with an automated classification for 3.5 million documents. And I think that also matters in this context, the automated classification that was derived was then confirmed as highly accurate by the client. So as such, there are obviously plenty of good reasons to use predictive coding. As I said, obviously there are matters of efficiency and effectiveness. So from a commercial perspective, it oftentimes makes sense to apply predictive coding. It can also be used in terms of a quality assurance measurement tool. So both to validate the results of a human review and to increase the consistency of human reviews that have been done. And that comes along kind of with the efficiency dimension. Predictive coding allows you to proceed faster in that sense that you get a quicker understanding of what's included in your data set, and you have a quicker understanding of what to review first. Now, like with everything, there are reasons why you might not want to use predictive coding in some situations, and that is in particular when you are facing a case that's trying to assess a variety of different complex legal matters in parallel. So whenever you are having a highly complex case, predictive coding might not be the go-to option for you. And same when you are confronted with the other extreme, that is when you are really having an extremely narrow scope, looking for the needle in the haystack, so to say, when machine learning can't really help you in this sense. There's also types of data that's not suitable really for predictive coding. That's in particular image files on the one hand, but on the other hand also financial data. So any type of financial statements, for example, isn't the type of data that you would usually use with predictive coding. Now, what's important to say though is that we are not talking about something that's optional. It's not something that's nice. In fact, it's something that you need to know and you need to have and you need to apply. In June 2020, the US Department of Justice published a revised guidance regarding the evaluation of compliance systems. And in that guidance, the DOJ made very clear that they focus on data analytics and that they expect legal and compliance professionals to use data, metrics, and objective evidence to assess compliance systems, and obviously, as we can deduct from that, also when it comes to performing investigations. Now, as you go about using this data, you will inevitably come across a variety of challenges. Now, I'm more here today to talk to you about solutions, obviously, than about challenges. Nevertheless, I want to just pinpoint a few just to make you aware of the vast scope that we have here. It both relates to challenges that you might come across in an extraction phase. So for example, when we talk about the identification of relevant items, you need to make sure in the very, very beginning of your investigation that you have an understanding of the data that's available, the data that you can collect, and once you do collect it, that you validate the completeness of such data, for example, as it relates to extraction. As you move on to analysis, you want to make sure that all the data that you have is cleansed, is harmonized, and is validated in a way and then stored in a safe and secure database, for example. I want to show you another example, actually, another case study of an engagement that we did last year to demonstrate to you how we were addressing those challenges and what the solutions were that we came up with. The context was a global merger investigation for two financial market data and infrastructure businesses. It was a global deal that was valued at around $25 billion US, so a really big transaction. And as such, given also the global nature of the deal, it did not involve just one regulator, but in fact two. So the Department of Justice was involved with an HSR filing and a second request. And on the other hand, you had the European Commission involved that had a phase 1 and a phase 2 investigation ongoing. And of course, as you can imagine, each regulator had a very own understanding of what they wanted us to examine. So we were really ending up conducting two investigations in parallel, where it was of prime importance for us to leverage efficiency wherever possible. Overall, in that investigation, which was again fully remote, we had a data scope of more than 4 terabytes, so even more than the Pandora Papers at this point, and we were dealing with more than 100 custodians. We ended up, at the end of the investigation, disclosing around 1.5 million documents to the different authorities, and throughout the progress of the investigation, providing 24/7 support to legal teams at all ends to support them in the review that they were doing. And if we look a little bit further at the solutions that we were applying, you can see in the collection phase, for example, you see that little magnifying glass which says I3 gap analysis. That was a really remarkable observation in this mandate, because as it came to the data that we were collecting remotely, we were actually able to identify that the client's collection of email data was having an 8-month gap due to legacy issues in the email journaling system. So as such, we were already identifying in the beginning issues with the data based on a proprietary tool that we were applying there. It's actually a tool that also allows us to harvest passwords from existing documents in the data pool. And with these documents, we were able to decrypt around 60% of the password-protected documents in that database of 4 terabytes. Now you can see on the slide, I could tell you many more details, but I'm going to keep it short at this point. We applied a variety of additional measures to reduce data volumes, increase review efficiency, and to manage the consistency of our outcome and our results. So in the end, you can see we applied various custom technology solutions that allowed us to control the cost of that massive operation, and they helped us to improve efficiency and increase accuracy of the documents that we were performing the review on. Now, as we talk about performing reviews, there is one tool in particular that probably many of you know, and it was one of the key tools in this engagement that helped us there. And it's called BrainSpace. BrainSpace is an analytics platform which allows you to quickly understand key themes in big amounts of data. And BrainSpace is connected to relativity, and as such has two major functionalities that we were using. You can see on the left side of the slide the cluster wheel, which allows you to conceptually group documents based on the content they contain. And you can see on the right side of the slide the analyses of communication, which is used to interactively navigate and explore and investigate the flow of communication between individuals over a certain period of time. So on this basis, we were able to make faster and better informed decisions, even when confronted with such vast amounts of data in a fully remote investigation. And I do have, on top of this, I do have one final example for you, which actually relates to a topic that's, I would say, pretty much omnipresent in the media these days. It's a case that related to transaction monitoring. And as you know, there's rarely a day going by without a financial institution making headlines for alleged shortcomings in their transaction monitoring capabilities. So here as well, we were mandated by a financial institution that actually found itself in a situation where it was working with a legacy core banking system, a system that did not have any effective in-house transaction monitoring capabilities. So as such, we started by sourcing data from the client, overall more than 1 terabyte of data, which corresponded to around 500 million transactions. So again, similar to the other examples, once the data has been sourced, we prepared it, so we cleansed it, we harmonized it, etc., and stored it in a database. Now, the magic happened really also at a later stage when we talk about analytics and review and the subsequent transaction monitoring. So what we were doing here is we were developing a scalable analytics solution for the client, and we were implementing a live feed of transactions that were happening at the financial institution to the data storage that we had enabled as a cloud solution. And within the cloud, we were building up a bespoke transaction monitoring solution that really lifted the client's legacy core banking system without effective transaction monitoring to a very different level, where the client was now working with a state-of-the-art, customizable transaction monitoring solution that was fed with a variety of anti-money laundering risk patterns specific to the risk pattern and the risk profile and client profile of that financial institution. Now, as the final section of my presentation, I want to talk to you about this, about data visualization. Data visualization has actually been around for quite a while. To be precise, since 1786, when the Scottish engineer William Playfield came up first with the line chart, the area chart, and the bar chart. And a couple of years later, he, by the way, also invented the pie chart. And ever since, data visualizations have been used to effectively bring out the message in large amounts of data. However, and this is where I really want you to be aware, there is also the thing that I call visualization crimes. Now, if you look to the right of the slide, you will see there are these charts where the chart type simply doesn't match the type of data that you are presented with, and as such, it's not really suitable for what you're trying to do. Or, like in the bottom right side, there are charts that are, I would say, at best meaningless, and at worst, highly confusing, because they are just not getting across the message. In the context of investigations, we of course also leverage visualization tools, in particular when it comes to visualizing networks and relationships. So we have come up with a proprietary solution again here that allows us to analyze in an intuitive and interactive way, for example, transactions between parties as part of an overall investigation. Where can this be used? For example, you can see on the left side, it was applied by us in the past when it came to identifying relatives and close associates of politically exposed persons, or we've also used it by supplementing transaction information with additional enriching information to visualize and identify large-scale networks of personal and corporate relationships, which as such help making smarter decisions on the basis of an investigation. Now, the visualization tool can also be used to visualize event timelines. So you can see here, this is the value of Bitcoin that you can see on the upper chart, and we've mapped it against different news messages that happen throughout a certain period of time. And as such, whenever you try to reconstruct the fact of the matter, then this is what you could use this visualization tool for. Now, with that visualization approach, we are coming through a close in our journey through the world of data in investigations. And if your head is now spinning with all the different tools and techniques and approaches that I have presented to you, I want you to take away just one key insight. And that's the following. So you can imagine data is like oases that are spread out across the desert. Every oasis on its own is already valuable. But it's really when you manage to link the different oases together that you are able to see the big picture and make smarter decisions. Thank you very much for your attention.